Hey everybody, this next video is mostly meant for beginners. I think more experienced pyrography artists may know, and maybe beginners also may know, these alternatives. I just want to remind you that you always have alternatives to big brands and expensive stuff. Don't let that put you down, or think that you cannot do a great work and a beautiful work with less expensive things. Some are short-term alternatives, others are long-term alternatives. Anyway, here it goes, and always remember that big brands are not an issue. You can achieve great results with cheaper alternatives, and I hope you enjoyed the video. Thank you. I would like to start with the carbon paper versus graphite paper. Well, I think this goes down to a personal preference, but most people prefer graphite paper because you can erase it easily than carbon paper. On the other hand, it smudges a little bit. This one doesn't. But if you use the carbon paper with heavy strokes, you won't be able to get it out of the wood. You can get it out to a certain point, but it has limits. So you can use carbon paper. I've been using carbon paper, but use light strokes. If you use heavier strokes, you won't be able to get it out of the wood, and it will show in your work. So in that way, I think graphite paper works better. But don't let this stop you from doing your work. You can still use carbon. The price is also much more expensive, graphite paper. These 60 sheets of carbon paper on Amazon costs at least $5.99, and the same 60 sheets of graphite paper costs $10.44 at least. It's the double of the price. I bought 100 sheets of carbon paper in a store nearby for €2.25, 100 sheets. So this is an alternative and can be used, but remember, light strokes, or you won't be able to erase it. This is one of the things I would like to show you. In the bottom line, you can always use an 8B pencil that works very good with, for instance, a light table. On the back of the drawing, you just make a layer or several layers to cover the whole drawing with an 8B pencil. It's the softer one, or you can just use a window. It's exactly the same thing, but your arms will hurt a little bit after a while, but it produces the exact same thing as the light table, which is sometimes also expensive. So you can do this and then trace the design onto the wood. It's exactly the same thing as graphite paper. It's exactly the same and costs a pencil. On the bottom line, this is what you have to get to do this. Another thing I would like to talk is about how you clean your tips. There are lots of things that you can have expensive to clean your tips. This is not a long-term solution, but you can use sandpaper, 600 grit or more. Don't use heavier sandpaper, because anyway this will wear down faster your tips. So this is not a long-term solution, but it's a cheaper one that you can use to keep doing your work if you don't have the money to buy more expensive things. Actually, the ideal would be a jeweler's rouge, polishing compound, and a cloth or some leather. I actually have the blue one. This is a general one. I think the green one is the most appropriate for the tips. This you can look for it on Amazon. They sell these and the cloth to clean after using this. It's really not that expensive. You can also buy that. It's another alternative. If you cannot afford for the moment any of these, you can use a very light sandpaper, 600 grits or more. Don't use less than this, because it takes down some of your tip and it may break, or something bad can happen. This is a short-term solution, just so you don't have to stop your work, or if you can't afford anything else. Okay? Another thing I would like to discuss is color pencils. Wax-based binder, oil-based binder. You are confused, it's normal. These two are oil-based, the Caran d'Ache and these Faber-Castell. They are usually more expensive than the wax-based core. I recently bought these ones, Castell Art Supplies. They are wax-based binder. Well, the wax-based color pencils are actually easier to erase, are softer. You can use more blending, more layering, more mixing. But the cores tend to break easier because they are very soft. And you can have the wax bloom issue if you don't use a fixative. Basically it's where the wax comes to the top layer of the color and creates a cloudy haze over the pigment. You just have to use a fixative or something. It's not a big issue, but they are much less expensive actually. You can buy, you also have this big brand Prismacolor Premier, 72 of them, costs around $32, while these 72 also cost around $22. It's a little different. So you don't have to buy these fancy pencils to have a beautiful work. I think these ones actually work. The other ones, oil-based pencils, these ones can cost you $32, only 30 pencils. And these, which are not good, the core is very hard, they are very cheap, but it's not worth it, in my opinion. They cost you $21, but I wouldn't recommend these ones. And the Polychromos, 60 pencils will cost you around $78. They are also oil-based cores. They are water resistant, UV resistant, don't smudge. Well, on the bottom line, it's your decision, but you have brands that work and are not so expensive. Remember, wax-based cores are cheaper. And are also very good. So we've come to the machine point, and at this point you have high-end machines with nickel chromium wire tips, and that are much more expensive, that go from $75 to $450, something like this. And you have solid brass or copper interchangeable tips machines. The one I would really recommend, and I think it is very good, you don't need to buy these high-end machines to achieve beautiful work. There are many experienced pyrography artists that still use the walnut hollow Versa tool. It comes with 11 tips and it costs $19.78 in Amazon. It has temperature regulation, and it is great to start and great to keep using it. So don't let this high-end machine myth scare you, or don't think that because you have walnut hollow Versa tool or this Antex Pyro Master you won't be able to do amazing work. I've seen amazing work done with these machines, and people that do pyrography for years still use them and don't want any other machine. The big difference between the two of them is of course the tips, and in this case the temperature variation. This comes with two sets of temperature, but I will get there. Let's talk about the tips. These are nickel chromium wire tips, and take like 10 seconds or less to heat until the desirable temperature. As higher the temperature, more time it will take to heat until that point. But anyway, 10 seconds, something like that. This one takes, I don't know, 5, 8, 10 minutes to achieve the maximum temperature, depending on the type of tip you are using. So that is the main difference, the time you spend waiting on the tip to heat up and to cool down, because you can use pliers to take the tip, but I wouldn't advise that while it is still hot, because you can strip the threads of the metal and you can damage the tip. I don't know, it's up to you. I confess I have done it, but you shouldn't do it. You can damage the tip. It's up to you. Well, a friend of mine did this for me, which is a lighting control with a regulator switch, or a dimmer switch, I think that's how you call it. And it has these two exits. One, you can plug the burner, and the other one at the end. So this works very good with this machine, the Antex Pyro Master. I don't know, and I cannot assure you that it will work with the single temperature pens. So if you try this, you're on your own. I'm not recommending, and I'm not saying that it will work with other single temperature pens. With this one it works, because I've tried it, and it works, and you have something exactly the same as a walnut hollow Versatool. Because you have this problem in Europe, you don't have the walnut hollow Versatool. At least I don't know any place that sells it with 220 volts. So you cannot use it here. But you can do this and plug the machine to this. It's always on the higher temperature, and I regulate the temperature through this. As I told you, this was a friend of mine who did this for me. I think it's pretty simple. I just made the box and made it look a little more pretty. So this is something you can do. Just because you don't have a high-end machine, it does not mean you cannot do beautiful work and detailed work. So don't let that myth take you down, or don't let your work aside because you don't have a high-end machine that costs hundreds of dollars. As I said, the walnut hollow costs $19.78 on Amazon, and this Antex Pyromaster costs £26.99 on Amazon UK. Just because we don't have the walnut hollow Versatool European version 220 volts. So this is what I wanted to say about the machines. The last thing I wanted to talk about is about usually, ideally, you should have a scrap piece of the same material that you are working on. In case you don't have any, for example, I got used to use this piece of cork. Just to see how the temperature of my tip is. I got used to understand how it works here, and more or less how it will work on the material I'm working on. Still, you can use this as an option, but if you are not used to use another material than the one you're working on, try the tip on the material you have, similar or something, and land the tip on a dark area, on one of the darkest areas first, just to test it. It will be black anyway, so don't worry. This is also a short-term solution that you can do. So if you don't have the scrap piece of the same material, don't worry. Just find something, a piece of wood, even if it's not exactly the same, and do that. Test the tip first on the scrap piece of material you have, and then if you're not sure if the temperature is exactly as you want it to be, test it on a black area of the design you are making, so it won't show and you won't damage anything of the design. Try to find the same material or the more similar material you can find. If not, you can use this. Don't let it stop you from working or doing your things.